Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film Warm Bodies, a zombie romantic comedy for teens. This zombie named R, who has wandered around this airport for a long time, hangs out in this airplane he has converted into a sweet apartment complete with a cool vinyl collection and all this stuff he likes to collect. And then one day he encounters Julie, who he thinks is really pretty, and falls in love with her and brings her back to the airport full of zombies. Somehow they don't notice. He puts blood on her, so that works, and then hangs out with her and keeps her there. As he falls in love with her, he starts becoming more human, and that starts to spread to the other zombies, and suddenly all the zombie corpses are cured because their love is so strong, or it reminds them all of being human. This is directed by Jonathan Levine, who also directed 50/50 and The Whackness, and this is by far his weakest directed film. I never really had a problem with how he uses the camera as much as I did in this film. I felt like the camera work was almost trapped on moderate Hollywood autopilot. There was nothing really that interesting about the camera work. The visuals were so boring and dull, it really hurt the film. Something like a zombie romantic comedy, it's something that you'd think a director could probably have fun with. This is kind of subverting the Twilight genre, if you will. It's trading, melodrama for comedy, and instead of the girl's perspective, you're going with the boy's perspective mostly. I mean, there's stuff with the girl, but it's mostly through Nicholas Holt's perspective as he's giving the narration. It's a good idea when you have this wave of movies that are based on the success of another movie, the way Summit's doing with this because of Twilight. And I understand it was a book, but that was why it was picked up. Unfortunately, it really falls flat for most of the film. Jonathan Levine doesn't really have fun with it. He doesn't really seem to like horror that much. There's a whopping of one horror reference when she pulls up a Blu-ray of Zombie right next to Nicholas Hoult. This film and Jonathan Levine, it's almost like he's seen Shaun of the Dead, but he doesn't really understand that part of the reason Edgar Wright's direction and Shaun of the Dead is so special is because of all the references and the love of zombie films. And I kind of don't think Jonathan Levine has actually seen a Romero before. I understand, much like Twilight, this has zero respect for the genre. Jonathan Levine, I read even on the Wikipedia page, says it's a different twist on the genre, but I think it is a different twist. It's a stupid twist, especially the way they did it, because he didn't seem to be having fun with his direction, so you get a really flat movie. I mean, sure, it's better directed than the first Twilight, and I guess that's something. The script, I think, is better than the direction, certainly, and the script isn't great. I think in the end it just kind of becomes a typical three-act Hollywood crap fest, but if it had a better director, it could have maybe been something more. And even as a comedy, I only heard the audience really laugh at one joke towards the end. You couldn't get the whole audience laughing very much, and you're a comedy, that's really not a good sign. I got the whole Romeo and Juliet thing. If you can't get the Romeo and Juliet thing, I think you're rather dense. The fact that his name is R and her name is actually Julie, so they were hiding it pretty well there. And they even have a nice balcony sequence in there, so it's rather cute. I seriously dislike films that don't really care much about their genre and try to act like, oh, we're putting a whole new twist on it. That you're kind of thumbing your nose at the genre while putting a different twist on it is just not going to rub anybody the right way, and especially one that's not directed with any panache behind it. The direction of this reminds me a lot of Gangster Squad, where you take a director like Ruben Fleischer, who's more of a comedy action director, and put him in a different genre and he falls flat. I heard a quote from Walter Hill this week that Hollywood kind of respects a filmmaker who makes them money and treats them like they're some sort of an auteur. And that's pretty much what went on with Jonathan Levine, because he just doesn't have the talent to back up this movie. It's cool when someone does something different with the genre, and I think that's what the most upsetting thing when I was watching it is. I like when people do something different with the genre. I like when people take a genre, especially one that's going to be ripped off a lot, and do something, and rather than melodrama, did something with comedy. The fact that it doesn't work is kind of defeating. It just didn't have enough of a heart behind it. This whole film is about these zombies finding their heart, and the funny thing is the director didn't find his heart in this. He didn't find a soul for this. This looked like kind of a work-for-hire job, and that's what it is, and you get this lifeless, dull Hollywood teen movie, and it's just like the rest of them, and it's just no different, and that's just not very exciting at all. So if you have seen Warm Bodies and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to.